and welcome to the Artful Chef. I am Miss M, art teacher. Today we are going to be talking about Zentangle. So what is Zentangle? Zentangle is an American method of drawing that promotes concentration and creativity. It also improves your personal well-being. It was created by a monk by the name of Rick Roberts and an artist by the name of Maria Thomas. So it's meditation meets art. Zentangle is a continuation of our study of the elements of art. So it is the element of line, and we're going to talk about the different ways to create a Zentangle. So in your PowerPoint, students, if you've looked at your PowerPoint, there are specific definitions for things that you're going to want to write down. They're highlighted in yellow. Remember I said anything highlighted in yellow is probably going to be on your test. So put those down in your notes. And now it's time to get started. You're going to need a piece of paper. You're going to need a fine-tipped pen and a wider pen. So you can do this with markers. You could do a fine-tip marker and a broad marker. You could do a fine-tip Sharpie and a regular Sharpie. Or if you don't have either of those things, you can use a pencil or a pen, and you can just thicken your lines as you need to and add weight in certain areas, and we will talk about that later in the video. So it's time to get started. We will begin our lesson today by talking about tangles. So tangles consist of lines, dots, curves, orbs, repeated shapes. Those are the things that come together to look like they're all tangled up. That's why they're called tangles. So Zen is just relaxation. So it's a relaxing way of creating these little tangled designs. It's a lot like doodling. So if you like to just doodle on paper, this will be perfect for you. So we're going to begin with a border. So in your PowerPoint, you find that border means your basic outline. So I'm going to do just a basic little outline for a shape here. So that's going to be my border. The next thing I want to talk about is strings. So strings are things that separate sections of work and they touch the border. So you are going to, for your learning assignment today, you're going to follow along and you're going to create these steps that I show you. Then you're going to turn this into Canvas as your assignment for your learning portion of your class this week. So number one, we are going to talk about a wavy string. So a wavy string is just like it sounds. It's wavy. So if you did something like that, that's a wavy string. The second string that we're going to talk about is curved. So we're going to create a border. A curved string is one that curves from one side to another. So remember, a string separates your work, it touches the border. So our string is curved and touching the border. Our third string we're going to talk about is a closed string. So closed would be, there's my border, I just did a basic border. If you were to make a loop that came down, this loop is closed. So this is a closed string. Our next one is called an open string. So I'm going to create a border. An open string is one that does not close off. You see how this loop comes around and it closes itself? So an open string would look more like that. So it's open on the end, so it doesn't close itself off by crossing the line. The fifth one we're going to talk about is a bounce. So I'm going to create my border. A bounce is, if you think about a basketball bouncing, it's going to come down, it's going to hit the ground, and it's going to bounce back up. That would be a bounce. Another option that you have when you are creating Zentangles would be no string. That basically leaves it wide open for your interpretation. Now that we have discussed the different types of strings you can have within a Zentangle, let's talk about the different patterns that you can create. So let's say we're working with our wavy string. So I have this little wave going on here. So I want to do a repeating shape. So a repeating shape is just like it sounds. So on a repeating shape, I would suggest that you switch to a finer tipped pin. And you're going to do exactly that. So you're going to repeat shapes. You're going to choose a shape and you're going to stick with it. So I think I'm going to go with a triangle today. So I might do a large triangle, some small ones, maybe another. So try different shapes of triangles. You could do obtuse and acute. You could do these little teeny ones, and you could do great big ones. You want to fill your space with these repeating patterns so that you are repeating this shape over and over again. There are lots of shapes that you can repeat, obviously. I just chose a simple one for you. The next one I want to talk about is called an aura. So I'm going to draw my curved string and I'm going to create my aura. So again, I would want to switch to my finer tipped pin. And on my aura, I think I'm going to go with circles. So I'm going to start with some dark circles, kind of sporadic. And the cool thing about Zentangle is that there's not really a right or wrong to this. It's just kind of what you feel. You're doodling, you're relaxing, and you're creating art. There's not supposed to be stressful. It's supposed to be just fun and relaxing. So an aura is a shape around a shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around each one of these circles that I've drawn. And I'm going to keep going around them until they touch. So this one right here touches, so I'm not going to do these two right here. I'm going to go around that one because there was a little bit of space, and then that one. So when you get to these areas where they touch, instead of continuing to go around them, you can begin to just fill in that space this way. You don't have to always go all the way around your shape. So this creates a very unique perspective on this design that you're creating within this border. The next one I want to talk about is called a closed juxtaposition. So juxtaposition is a very funny word. So juxtaposition is two things that are seen or placed close together with contrasting effect. So we will get further into contrast when we get farther down the road in our elements of art, but basically contrast is the difference between light and dark. You see that contrast when you see black and white in this artwork. So we have a closed juxtaposition. So I'm going to do one of my closed strings. And then I'm going to create a pattern that is within my closed string. So it's going to be over here. And I'm going to have two things that are close together that contrast each other. So I might decide to go with maybe some geometric shapes. I'll stick with rectangles, and maybe I'll turn my rectangles in different directions. So I said it was two things seen or placed close together. So for my other thing that I'm going to place in here, I think I'm going to do a zigzag line. And again, Zentangle is about just being creative and coming up with something that is filling your space, you're repeating patterns, you're making some kind of cool picture that is unique. It's something that's going to help you just be creative and relax in your art. So, two things seen or placed close together with contrasting effect is called juxtaposition. The next one I want to show you is contrast. So I said over here was two things that contrast. So remember, contrast is the difference between light and dark. So I'm going to use my open string that we did before, and I'm going to show a contrast. So I'm going to begin by drawing some lines across here, and I want it to look like my lines are crisscrossing one another. So when you go across a line and you don't want it to look like it's on top of it, you would stop at the outer part of the line so that it looks like it's under that line. The way that I'm going to create contrast is by coloring in the background. So this very dark background around these bright white striped lines here is going to make those lines stand out. And remember, if students, if you're following along with this at home for your assignment, please label the things as I am doing as you go along so that you remember what it is that you're working on, because you will be creating your own Zentangle for your homework this week. So you will have one assignment in Canvas that is your learning assignment, and you will have one assignment in Canvas that is your actual art project. So this is contrast. The next one I want to talk about is branching. I'm going to draw my border. I'm going to create my string that is a bounce. Remember, a bounce is kind of like when a basketball hits the ground and it bounces back up. That would be a bounce. So this one is called branching. So on branching is where you can do leaves or flowers or things that would normally grow up on a branch like that. So I think I'm going to create some leaves on my branching. So your branching could be on both sides if you wanted it to be. It doesn't have to be. But I kind of like the look of that. So we're going to go with that. You could do different little designs for detail within your leaves to kind of make them unique. Maybe you could do some dots. All the little details make the difference when you're doing Zentangles. It's kind of the difference between simple and just over the top. So this would be an example of branching. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think about how can you bring all of this together. So I have a couple examples that I want to show you that are completed. And then how I got to that point. So this is one that was started by just this simple squiggly line right here. So I had some closed strings and some open strings and a little curved string right here. So just random types of strings all over my page. And then I filled in those areas with different patterns. So I'm going to include in your assignment in Canvas some example pages of some ideas that you could use for patterns within your Zentangles that you're creating. So this is one option. I want to show you another option. So this is a finished piece. This is how it began. So I had these simple shapes, circle, the flower, these little auras or curved areas here, and all I did was I just started filling in with different patterns in each area. So making sure that you have some areas with very high contrast and some areas that have patterns and branching, all those together make for a very beautiful piece of art. This last one I want to show you has words added to it. So this is simple lines here, and what I've done is I've filled in those basic lines with some words, and then in between created all these different patterns that emphasize and make the artwork beautiful, but also can display a message. Imagination is as important as knowledge opens your mind. So I want you to be imaginative, be creative, come up with some different patterns of your own, but also feel free to use any of the pattern ideas that I have included for you in your canvas. And I look forward to seeing your artwork. Have fun!